So what is the, excuse me, GD? I'll say P to be kind. But what is the GD number? It doesn't make any sense. Okay? It's a joke. You understand, guys? It's a joke. Nobody will look further than this. People repeat it like it's gospel. There's no truth in it. I feel like I'm going crazy. Americans have stopped thinking. You know why? Some of it is because we are now doing it ourselves. Because Obama spent all this money on these joke projects, and they're not real either. Like the census and these buildings, oh, I'm going to build roads. They're not real jobs. They're going to go. You know what I mean? They're one shot. Okay, build a bridge a building, you know what I'm saying? Houses, houses, houses. They have no meaning. They're just empty buildings. They have no meaning for real wealth. China is it's like the three little pigs. It's built on sticks. Now, I'm not saying that it's not growing. I'm not saying that. And I don't think it was weak as it was a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, I thought, if we continue our recession, I thought we really had a chance that it would really, because I've always thought that Taiwan would become independent by something external. It was not going to be, it was not going to be diplomacy, it's not going to be war. It was going to be something external. And I mean, some of the pieces of the chess pieces were going to move externally, okay? But China has showed that no matter what happens, they still don't move on Taiwan. They don't seem to move on Taiwan when America scares them. And when America is conciliatory, they don't move on Taiwan. They're like, oh my God. Even when Chen, who turned out to be crazy himself, okay? In 2004, he won with 2 parties. First time he won with 3 parties. Second time he won with 2 parties, with the referendums. I mean, he was really kind of going crazy. I mean, believe me, we were telling him, look, would you stop with the referendums? I mean, I was telling him, what's the point with the referendum? The referendum isn't binding. The referendum is just if there was a referendum. You know, remember how the referendum was formed? It's like, if there was a referendum. It's like, what's the point of that? Okay? And he won. So the Chinese are like, well, wait a minute. So if we invade Taiwan militarily, and it's against the Taiwanese will, then what? You see what I'm saying? And when he won the first time, remember they all like, we're gonna go, you're gonna regret this, we're gonna kill, and they did nothing. So they feel like they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. In other words, if they do it, by force, and the Taiwanese are really opposed to it, then, okay, how are we gonna hold this? And, everyone's on the internet and they're gonna be the bad guys. And if they don't do it by force, in other words, the only thing that's going to happen is if the Taiwanese give up and they sort of say, well, okay, we're yours, we're tired. You know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? It doesn't seem to be their sheer might. It will be if the Taiwanese give up. Or if they feel like they're too pooped or they're too poor. But the Chinese are worried about social unrest. But the Taiwanese public does care about Taiwan. They've been drilled into it that Taiwan's important, Taiwan's important. You know what I mean? They've been drilled in. They've been drilled into that. Okay? But if the Taiwanese, as long as they keep it real, and they're not tricked by the governments, whether they be KMT or DPP, to fudge the numbers, to keep it real, then they will remain a relatively strong economy. But yeah, means the numbers have to be real. No inflating the numbers by bank lending. In other words, be fiscally responsible, not like here in the good old United States where we're going to be in debt for the rest of our, you know what I mean, the rest of our great-grandchildren's lives, or more and more great-grandchildren. Well, it'll be for the rest of our days. But I mean, still one has to understand, I'm sorry, I'm talking too long, but I mean, if people don't understand one thing, they have to understand that the numbers aren't real. Now, can I explain to you how the numbers aren't real? No. But the coming Prime Minister, what is his name, Cohesion, was talking just the other day, and he got in trouble for this, saying, well, the GDP numbers are just a reference point. Because they can't justify them. He said, well, look at electricity and railroads and bank lending. And if you look at those, none of those make sense. GDP, see, the electricity consumption and railroads are, the DVP didn't act that way, but maybe it was just because I hadn't been in power that long. So you felt they were sincere, but maybe they were just novices. But in the end, there was some unbelievably stupid stuff done. Unbelievably stupid stuff. And it could be that they were just outmaneuvered by the KNT. And you know, they became corrupt at the end because, if I want to be charitable about it, that they felt they were getting nowhere, that they were going to be all indicted at the end, and so they took what they could so they could flee, because they were all going to be, KMT was going to kill them. But to be uncharitable about it, they could have just said, okay, we're in power now, we're going to steal like everybody else. But I believe that they started to get moles in their government. And I think there were moles in there from the beginning. They were spies. There was definitely spies in there when I was there. In fact, that was part of what it was about for me. Because there were people in the US government that, in trying to contain Chen, tried to use me to show that Chen was out of control and that the US government should support the KMT. You see what I'm saying? So they tried to show that I was complicit in Chen's sort of radicalism. See what I'm saying? So they would accuse me of supporting Chen, even though I liked Chen, I thought he was sincere, but I would always support the U.S. government line, like, you know, no, you know what I mean, stand back. You know what I mean? The U.S. will support you, but you know, you need to stand back. But there were those people, and I felt that you could control Chen by giving him face. You see what I'm saying? And they thought the way to control Chen was to humiliate him. And as you can see, the U.S. government humiliated him and humiliated him and humiliated him, which made him crazier and crazier and crazier. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason why he went crazy. I'm just saying I noticed Chen getting crazier and crazier and crazier. In other words, the more he got humiliated by the U.S. government, he definitely went crazier. I mean, by the time George Bush stood up next to Wen Jiabao and publicly chastised him, I thought that Chen was going to need a straitjacket. And frankly, people in the State Department were shocked that an American president would publicly stand by the biggest dictatorship in the world and pointedly, without using his name, but pointedly criticize the leader of a fledgling democracy. I mean, even, people that were pro-China in the State Department, they were shocked by it. But it was because I believe President Bush was, see, now you have to remember, and I think we talked about it, certainly John and I and Kim, we were talking about it last night, and I think I've talked about it. It really started out badly because if some of you remember, I don't know how much time we have, John, almost out. Doug Paul, who was the director, who came before me, he did not want to go to Taiwan because when you go to Taiwan, you don't get the title of ambassador. He wanted another country, he wanted Korea, where he'd get the title of ambassador. Plus, he had some problems from his old business where there were some questions about his business. There was his partner was and had been indicted, he was in jail. And so he had troubles getting confirmed. And it was known in Taiwan that he didn't want Taiwan. Well, what happens when you know someone doesn't like you or doesn't want to be there? You don't like them either. Okay, so the Taiwanese people wasn't really crazy about him. So when he got there, they didn't really like him. And he was kind of a big guy and older. We ready to stop?
We have about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 more.
Okay. Anyway,
yeah, about 30 minutes.
he was 10 years older, and I was a woman and 10 years younger. And I wanted to be there. So there was immediate this. So he was part of the pro sort of KMT crowd, and he immediately was, that caused that immediate thing. So he was trying to convince the president that the KMT is that started a chain of internally that then went on to the natural animosity within Taiwan, KMT, DPP, China. You see what I'm saying? So, when we have more time, I can talk about it later. But
Ambassador Shaheen, last Monday, I attended a speech at Stanford University. We had a guest come over. Her name is Ling Manhong, and she worked for the KMT government. She was she had held a very high position. She controlled the top,
National History.
yeah, it's a top institute for history.
when did she work for that? Recently?
Yeah, yeah, and she was forced down because of an embarrassing scandal. Anyway, so she came
Real
over.
or perceived? I mean, did she feel she was forced out unfairly?
Well, that's what she felt.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right.
but then so she came over and spoke about her theory on the relationship between the ROC and Taiwan. The ROC and Taiwan. She had theories on involving the Taipei Treaty, the San Francisco Peace Treaty, and she so she tried very hard to connect the ROC and Taiwan, sort of implying that there's an inseparable relationship between it. And then a few days later, my father sent me an article. It was an editorial from the Taipei Times on I think January the 7th, but he just sent it to me, and I really liked it. It's called "Stop Fabricating Taiwan's History," and it says that it says there's one sentence I like. It's the single difference between the DPP and the KMT is that the KMT believes that there can be no Taiwan without the ROC, while the DPP believes that there can be no ROC without Taiwan. And I think I totally agree. But then I feel that, so Miss Lin, she was spreading her theory on how ROC has legitimacy in Taiwan, etc., etc. And so I posed the question. So after World War II,